Imagine you're standing in the middle of a forest. It's pitch black. You can't see the trees. You can't see the path. You can't even see your own hands in front of your face. All you have is a map. We're all travelers in this dark forest. We're all trying to find our way home. But here's the problem. We aren't holding the same map. Some of us hold a map drawn by the cartographers of matter. We call it science. It marks every rock, every river, every physical hazard with perfect precision. Others hold a map drawn by the cartographers of spirit. We call it revelation. It marks the things the other map misses: hope, purpose, and the destination of the soul. And because our maps don't match, we scream at each other in the dark. We fight over which path is real. We fight over which map is true. But we miss the most important detail. Most debates between atheists and believers fail before they even begin. Not because one side is wrong, but because they're arguing about completely different things. Before we talk about God, religion, or atheism, we need to answer one question. What counts as truth? Because if your definition of truth already excludes certain answers, the debate is over before it starts. If your map only shows things you can touch, you'll never believe in the wind. And by the end of this video, you may realize that most popular atheist arguments quietly assume a definition of truth they never justify. Let's look at the tool we trust the most: science. It's the greatest engine of discovery humans have ever built. It gave us penicillin. It gave us the internet. It gave us technology. We love this tool. We respect this tool. But somewhere along the way, we made a mistake. We stopped using science as a tool, and we started using it as a philosophy. We started believing that if science can't measure something, it doesn't exist. This is called materialism. Think of it like a metal detector. If you walk onto a beach with a metal detector, you can prove with 100% certainty that there are coins buried in the sand. The machine beeps, you dig, you find the metal. It works every time. But imagine if you stood on that same beach and said, "There is no plastic here because my machine didn't beep." You'd be a fool. The plastic is right there. It's real. It's solid. The problem isn't that the plastic doesn't exist. The problem is that you're using a tool designed to detect magnetic fields to find a polymer. You're using the wrong map. This is exactly what happens when we demand empirical evidence for God. We take the scientific method, a tool built to measure matter, energy, and time, and we try to use it to measure the being who created matter, energy, and time. When the machine doesn't beep, the atheist declares, "See, no God." But that isn't a scientific conclusion. That's a philosophical assumption. It's a belief. Actually, it's worse than a belief. It's a contradiction. Think about the statement, "Science is the only way to know the truth." That sounds smart. It sounds rational. But ask yourself, can you prove that statement using science? Can you put that sentence in a test tube? Can you measure it with a ruler? No. The statement, "Science is the only way to know the truth," is not a scientific fact. It's a philosophical claim. You have to believe it by faith before you can even start doing science. We have to be honest about this. The claim that only the physical world exists is just as unprovable as the claim that God exists. You can't put the concept of materialism in a test tube. You can't prove it with a math equation. It's a starting point. It's a lens you choose to wear. So if both the believer and the atheist are starting with unprovable assumptions, which lens actually brings the world into focus? Which map matches the territory? Let's look at meaning. Science is incredible at answering the question, how? It can tell you exactly how a violin string vibrates at 440 Hertz to create the note A. It can explain how the sound waves travel through the air, hit your eardrum, and turn into electrical signals in your brain. But science cannot tell you why the music makes you cry. It can explain the mechanics of the tear ducts. It can explain the chemistry of the hormones, but it cannot explain the sorrow. It cannot explain the beauty. When it comes to the why, the metal detector is silent. This leaves us with two options for where meaning comes from. Option 1, the accident. If the materialist view is true, then the universe is a cosmic car crash. It's a random explosion that happened billions of years ago for no reason at all, or just the debris. We're biology that learned to walk. If this is true, then nothing effectively matters. Your love for your children? Just a chemical reaction to ensure the survival of your genes. Your desire for justice? Just a pack instinct to keep the tribe together. In a random universe, meaning is just a comforting hallucination we invented to keep from going mad in the dark. Look at a sunset. The materialist map says that is just dust particles scattering light waves. And that's true. But the human heart looks at it and says, that is beautiful. If the materialist is right, the beauty is a lie. It's a trick. But if you believe the beauty is real, then you're seeing something the map can't show. Then there's option 2, the architect. If this view is true, the universe isn't a crash, it's a construction site, and you aren't an accident, you're a tenant. The meaning isn't something you have to invent, it's something you have to discover. It's built into the foundation of the house. Here's the hard truth. You don't get to have it both ways. You can't believe we're a cosmic accident and also believe that human life is objectively sacred. In a car crash, nothing is sacred. It's just wreckage. If you believe human life has value, you're already borrowing from the architect's map. This leads us to the problem of morality. Look at nature. It's brutal. It's red in tooth and claw. When a lion chases down a gazelle and tears its throat out, we don't call the police. We don't put the lion on trial. We don't call it murder. We call it lunch. We accept that in nature, the strong eat the weak. That's the law of the jungle. But when a human man kills another human man, we don't call it nature. We call it a crime. We call it evil. We demand justice. Why? If we're just advanced animals, if we're just hairless apes with bigger brains, why should we care? Why shouldn't the strong eat the weak? The atheist will say, well, we evolved to cooperate. It's better for survival. And that's true to a point, but that only explains why I shouldn't kill my neighbor. It doesn't explain why I should care about a starving child on the other side of the ocean who I will never meet. It doesn't explain why I should run into a burning building to save a stranger. Evolution explains survival. It doesn't explain self-sacrifice. And it definitely doesn't explain moral progress. We look back at history, at slavery, at genocide, and we say, that was wrong. We are better than that now. But if morality is just a social contract, just a vote we take, then the Nazis weren't wrong. They just had a different vote. To say a crooked line is crooked, you have to have a straight line to compare it to. To say the world is evil, you have to have a standard of good that sits outside the world. This moral compass we all feel, this undeniable sense that some things are right and some things are wrong. It's a glitch in the evolutionary software. It shouldn't be there. Biology can explain the hardware of your brain, but it can't explain the software of your conscience. The fact that we feel outraged by injustice is proof that we're tuning into a signal that isn't coming from nature. We're hearing a broadcast from outside the machine. But the skeptic has one final defense. They say, okay, maybe meaning and morality feel real, but they're just tricks of the brain. They're placebos. Show me a miracle. Show me something that breaks the laws of physics. And when millions of people throughout history say, I saw a miracle, the skeptic says, you're hallucinating. It's a coincidence. It's the placebo effect. This is where the logic fails, because to prove that all swans are white, you have to travel to every lake on Earth and check every single swan. It's impossible. But to disprove it, you only need to find one black swan. Think about the billions of reports of the supernatural across human history, near-death experiences where people saw things they couldn't have seen, terminal cancers disappearing overnight, prophecies fulfilled centuries later. We aren't just talking about ancient myths from people who didn't understand lightning. We are talking about doctors, pilots, and scientists in the modern age who have encountered things their map cannot explain. For the materialist view to be true, every single one of those reports, millions upon millions of them, must be a lie, a hallucination, or a mistake. Every single one. But for the believer, we only need one of them to be real. If just one near-death experience is authentic, if just one miracle actually happened, then the materialist worldview collapses. The box is open. To bet your entire soul that millions of people throughout history were all crazy is the most reckless wager a person can make. We trust science because it works, but we have to remember its history. 1,000 years ago, the scientific truth was that the sun revolved around the earth. 200 years ago, the scientific truth was that life could spontaneously arise from non-living matter. 70 years ago, the scientific truth was that the universe was eternal and had no beginning. Then we discovered the Big Bang, and suddenly, science had to catch up to Genesis. Science is constantly correcting itself. It's constantly saying, oops, we got that wrong. And that's its strength. That's why it's amazing. But that's also why it cannot be the foundation of your life. If your truth changes every time a new textbook comes out, then you don't have truth. You have the current best guess. Real truth, things like logic, mathematics, and moral laws, doesn't change. The number 4 was the number 4 before we existed, and it will be the number 4 a billion years after we are gone. These things are eternal. They aren't physical, and yet the atheist relies on them every single day to do science. They use logic to argue against God, even though logic can't be found in a test tube. They use morality to judge religion, even though morality can't be found in an atom. They're stealing from God's map to argue against his existence. Science is a powerful tool, but it's not a worldview. Tools don't explain themselves. A hammer is great for building a house, but you can't ask the hammer, who should live here? You can't ask the hammer, why did we build this? The hammer doesn't know, it's just a tool. If you want to know the purpose of the house, you have to ask the architect. So we return to the map. We've seen that the materialist map has blank spots. It cannot show us the terrain of love. It cannot show us the mountains of justice. It cannot guide us through the valley of death. So if truth isn't limited to test tubes and measurements, then the question of God isn't irrational. It's the only logical step left. But is belief in God actually reasonable, or just a comforting illusion? That's where we're going next.